Is it supposed to have a color, Tim? Are we supposed to have something?
It doesn't happen immediately.
He's all red. He's all red. Matt's good. Matt's good. Matt, you're the only one talking today? Oh, look, I'm good. Once it sees red, let go.
Well,
Are you plugged in, Tim?
maybe I need another. You guys got on okay. This thing.
They probably have battery pack.
Nope.
You good? Okay, great.
If you guys consider yourselves 6 feet apart, I don't, it doesn't bother me, but I don't like wearing this thing and doing all the talking. Is that going to be acceptable?
I'll be fine.
Ready to go? Good afternoon and welcome to the Selectmen's meeting, 6th of December, 4 o'clock. Again, want to welcome our new Selectmen, Martha Shoemaker, and Matthew Ward. The first item will be to review the minutes of the 15th of November, which have been previously distributed. We could have a motion and ask for comments after the motion.
So moved.
Okay.
A second.
Okay, comments on the meeting minutes.
I don't have any.
Okay.
None.
All right, we can then vote. All in favor of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Thank you. All right, we don't have communications, but the next item is to consider 2 appointments to the American Recovery Plan.
Hey, Tim, 1 second. Do we need to approve the special meeting?
They aren't on the agenda,
Okay,
so
I'm sorry. All right.
we'll catch them next time. Thank you.
Yep, sorry.
The American Recovery Plan Committee is a committee, so there's no finite number of members, and there is no specific term for people on committees. So because Mary Jo Nozel left as the Selectmen's representative, Martha has graciously agreed to assume that role, and it was suggested that Mary Jo, because of her involvement, be reappointed because she resigned at our last meeting. So we could probably consider the appointments of Martha Shoemaker and Mary Jo Nozel to the American Recovery Plan Committee.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion on that? If not, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. So, inasmuch as we're relatively new in terms of 2 of the Selectmen, I thought we take some time and go through a number of items that have been discussed at Selectmen's meetings over the past few months and bring you up to date. The first one, Soundview, Frank Pappalardo will be coming to the meeting. He won't be here for a bit, but we could maybe postpone that item until he arrives. But he's on that committee, and he asked if he might speak to it. So if it's okay, we'll skip a Roman numeral 1 there, and when he arrives, we can pick that up.
Sure.
The next item is the Soundview Sewers. This has been going on for probably a decade or more in terms of the town's involvement. And I think we know that the 3 private beaches and Soundview, which is the town of Old Lyme, are 4 entities that really constitute the Soundview Sewer Project. It may not have the proper name, but we call it Soundview Sewers. The 3 beaches and the town's WPCA have worked fairly diligently over the last couple of years that I've been involved to get a hold of what needs to be done to anticipate the installation of sewers, particularly in Soundview. And the first step is to install the common infrastructure, which is a collection pipe, a pump station, and a force main pipe, which goes from the bottom of Portland Avenue up Portland Avenue, and then on 156 it'll head east to East Lyme to the pumping station there. The second part of it is the actual installation of sewers in those 4 areas. Because the private beaches are state-chartered beach associations, they will be installing their own gravity sewers. And what I mean by gravity sewers is a system that would depend on gravity to move the material down toward the beach to the collection pipe. And then the collection pipe would transport it to the pump station. So in the case of Old Lyme Shores and Old Colony, they would be pumping material in a westerly direction, and Miami would pump it in an easterly direction. Anticipating that the piping would need to cross various town roads and other property, we have undertaken getting various easements in place so that when the pipes actually are installed, they will have easements over the property in favor of, in most cases, the 3 private beach associations. A town road's a town road, but if Old Colony, Miami, etc., would pump, then they would need an easement over the town roads to have their piping and so forth. In addition, there was an easement required for the parking lot behind the pavilion, which basically Frank Marotta controls, because that would be a much shorter distance to travel than going up Swan, across Martino, and back down Hartford, and then to the pumping station. And mind you, as you extend the length of the pipe, you need to keep a certain pitch to assist the
Come on, let's
pumping.
go.
But get this music there. So we were able to negotiate with Frank a right-of-way across or an easement across the so-called Soundview parking area, so that is awaiting when the pipe will be actually installed. And we're mindful that we have to avoid activity during the very busy season. So probably from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we would not expect to be digging up Soundview. Part of the requirement to have the common infrastructure installed is a Inter-Municipal Agreements, and because the three beaches had their various agreements ahead of us, we're later in the process, and so we need to get intermunicipal agreement with the City of New London for the wastewater treatment plant, the sewer plant, if you will, and a second one for the East Lyme Waterford, the piping and the pump stations that are in those communities. We have been successful at negotiating the intermunicipal agreement with New London, and that's signed, sealed, and delivered. And we are soon to hopefully sit down with people in East Lyme, because Mark Nickerson was the person who was in charge of the wastewater commission over there, and I believe he's out of all of these assignments at this point. So we need to pick up with whomever is taking over and work on that agreement. Both agreements call for a fee to join, which can be paid over a period of 20 years at a 2% rate. And then, of course, once entities are flowing material through East Lyme, Waterford, and New London, then there would be semi-annual payments required for the volume. So, as I say, we're set with New London. Until things start flowing, we've only paid them a modest sum to begin with, but then when things start, we would be expected to pay them a much larger fee, and then these ongoing fees. Because we haven't had a chance to work out all the details with East Lyme and Waterford, that remains to be done, although in concept I think we're agreed on the mathematics. It's a question of getting the deal done. So that'll happen hopefully. I don't know if we can get a meeting before Christmas, but it's potentially so.
What flow are we allocated? Like, what's the amount that we agreed on?
The magnitude?
Or what's the amount that we agreed New London would accept from us? Like,
well, the four entities negotiated 300,000 gallons a day. Now that's in excess of what would likely happen by a good deal. The three private beaches signed up of the 120,000 gallons. The town of Old Lyme has 50,000, and that leaves 130. There's allocation, but we're not actually signed up for it.
Okay.
Now that could, here's Mr. Papalara. That could actually play a role if another entity such as Hawks Nest were forced by the DEEP to install a sewer. And actually the piping and the pump station are capable of handling extra volume. They'd have to likely put another pump in the pump station, but in terms of the piping going to East Lyme, it could handle the 300,000 gallons as I understand. So even though Lyme does not, the WPCA does not believe we would use that much flow ongoing. Now in the summer, of course, there's peak periods. We have a lot of seasonal houses, and so that you'll see peaks and valleys. But we don't believe that even at the peak we would be doing an equivalent of 50,000 gallons a day. So there's a bunch of excess capacity built into this. Should another entity wish to join, from Old Lyme, it would require the approval of the group. And I think it's, I forget the actual number, whether it's 3 out of 4. I think it's a reasonably high number. So one could not just say, well, I want to have my subdivision use the sewer facility. It would require the approval of the group, and then they'd have to go on hand and knee to speak to New London and to East Lyme and Waterford. So it's not an easy process. But we think that the $300,000 should take care of things for quite some while in terms of what our needs are.
So Tim, I have a question. Is there a draft of the Inter-Municipal Agreement at East Lyme now? I mean, do they have a draft copy?
They have what was done by the 3 private beaches. Yeah, and ours would be similar to that. It would probably be very close in nature to it, and hopefully the economic terms would be appropriate for 50,000 gallons. So it's not like we have to reinvent. And at this point, because the 3 beaches are further along in the process, there's some issues with the clean water funding that they would like us not to be part of it until we get the intermunicipal agreement with East Lyme and Waterford, and there's certain benchmarks, and then we would be admitted. We have an agreement to join the cost-sharing agreement, so it's pretty clear where we're headed, but in terms of actually having it joining right away, there would be a delay of some sort, but at least we'd get the deal done.
So is the ball in East Lyme's court? We're waiting for them to call us?
Yes. They must work with us to get the agreement. There was some discussion saying, well, maybe we'll have an agreement with the 3 beaches and we'll have a separate agreement with Old Lyme. I don't think that makes much sense, because you have the extra capacity that wouldn't be allocated to the 3 beaches and to Old Lyme. If we got 50 and they got the rest, 250, if we ever needed more, it's going to be awkward. And why do we want to have 2 agreements, more process, more lawyers and everything else? So I think the conversation would be that the original deal contemplated 4 entities, part of the intermunicipal agreement, and that's how we'd like to do it. So when we get our appointment in East Lyme, hopefully we can have that happen.
Okay.
Of course, the bids for the common infrastructure went out, and the whole project was bid, and 2 companies, which I think have relatives running one each, they bid on it, and it was very, very high. So the decision was to reject the bids and then go back out by breaking the project down to the collection pipe, the pump station, and then the force main. Notwithstanding, of course, with some of the current conditions, that those new bids, taking the low of the bids, that too is high, less high than the other, but still pretty high. And the concern is that the town of Old Lyme got a bond, I think it's $9 million, to do the whole thing, which would be basically short-term financing, because the way it should work is that the costs would be shouldered, and ultimately then the costs would convert to individual obligations of the homeowners that would pay back their share of the obligation on a 20-year, 2% basis. There is of course, the clean water would reimburse 25% of eligible costs. Certain costs are not eligible. So, and each of the 3 beaches had their own their own financial arrangements with their membership. So if what comes through finally is in excess of what each of the beaches has approved for itself, that they would have to go back and ask their membership to approve a higher number. It would be awkward, of course, if the membership rejected that and they didn't have authority to assess a larger number on their membership because the DEP has a consent order to all of us, and if they said we're not doing it because our membership won't pay for it, you can imagine there'd be consequences from the DEP. So that's speculation. Right now, material costs are high, so with respect to the cost of the piping and so forth, we haven't heard the end of the story. I guess one idea would be if that's deemed to be too high, would you wait until costs became less, or would you try to get the approval and strike while the iron's hot? So this, we don't know how this is going to actually turn out.
Can I ask, when you split the bids, did we get more vendors interested in the project than just the two?
Yes.
Okay.
More of them, but those are being evaluated, so I don't think we have a final number from the engineer.
Right.
It's not our engineer who is evaluating it. Ours is Woodward and Curran.
Right.
And the other engineer is Fuss and O'Neill, and they're working on behalf of the three beaches. So we'll wait and see what comes out. I think we have till February to respond, as I understand it, but it will be a very important decision whether this all comes together properly with the three beaches. So another thing that is on the radar is, assuming we move forward and the common infrastructure is constructed, then the gravity sewers, the issue of staging materials will become an issue. When we had Connecticut Water working on putting the water pipes in, we were able to use, that was basically for Soundview, we used the half acre that the town owns between, across from the church down there.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, the closer to the activity, the better, and the cheaper. So all three beaches and town of Lyme/Soundview will need staging areas. So it's not like there's a lot of open areas that are available, particularly if there was activity by two or three beaches at once. So that's something we don't have to face right now, but it's the farther away the stockpiles are, the more difficult and costly it'll be to move the material around. So that's a short explanation of that. Any further questions? Frank, I mentioned that you would be coming, so we could talk about the Soundview sidewalk. I see Mary Jo's here, so if we need information, but this project, there was a grant for $400,000 from the state of Connecticut to
thank you so much.
To help fund the project.
Mm-hmm.
Not all costs associated with the project are eligible to be paid through the grant. It was pretty well assumed before the bids went out that it would be unlikely that the bids would come back to make the project be less than $400,000 to do the sidewalks. Well, lo and behold, the bid came in very aggressively, $260,000, something like that neighborhood. So that was cause for rejoicing. And there was then thought saying, okay, since the grant's $400,000 and the project's essentially less, there would be elements that could be added to the project that could be funded by the grant if the DOT approved. And they were in general agreement that a lot of the proposed bus shelter that wasn't contemplated originally but came into the picture, that would be suitable for funding. So as we went through the project, there were no real surprises, and so the committee looked into how we could do the bus shelter. And as part of the Connecticut Water project, as a favor for using the site for storing materials and so forth, the Connecticut Water agreed to box in a road between the police station and Dimitri's plumbing there. It was just boxed in. There was no pavement or anything else. So that was a help. But that sort of set the stage for having the bus come down 156 either way and then pull in and be in a much safer, better area for picking up and discharging passengers. So it became apparent that the scope of the project, if it was done to the full extent, it would include some sidewalk going from the present sidewalk to the bus shelter area, a pad for the bus shelter, some amenities, paving on the loop road where the bus would stop so people could get into the bus that needed handicap assistance, and then some other incidentals and landscaping of the property to the rear where there are 3 houses, Frank?
3 abutters.
So maybe I'll let you pick up, if you will, on as it went forward, but we're still working the numbers. But
yeah, we've spent a lot of time on spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet. Tim would do one, we would do one, someone else would do one. Probably thought it would be just an easier way of handling it, just to do a very linear spreadsheet chronologically, identifying what our expenses have been. So on page 1, we have 2 columns, basically eligible charges and ineligible charges. Certain charges are ineligible as far as the grant is concerned. They happen to be engineering, surveying, and things of that nature, and some of the design work. We did find a couple areas up right on the top. We have legal. Of course, there's some legal issues we had to deal with, but we also determined, and a good portion of this legal happened to be an easement that we had to get for the corner of Hartford Avenue, for realignment of Hartford Avenue. So that was something that was unexpected, but that fell into the ineligible costs. And then you move down, and after we get through legal, BSC is the design engineer group, and their costs are a combination of eligible and ineligible. When we get into the construction testing and oversight, that's an eligible cost, but the design portion of it is ineligible. So to date, we have roughly $204,000 of eligible costs and $40,000 and change of ineligible costs. So if December anticipated, one of the first anticipated will be another $61,000 appropriation for our, $61,000 application for payment to Martin LaBarrow, which is the contractor. And then we move down to some change orders that happen to occur. You can go on page 3, we'll show you the detail of each change order, but I could go through it quickly. Change order 1 was for Cross Lane. It was some curbing that was added for some enhanced safety for the property there. Change order 3 was some blacktop that we had to replace around the Teddy's Pizza area to correct some water issues there. Change order 4 is some of the amenities that Tim was speaking about earlier for the bus shelter area. And change order 2 was a decorative signpost. When we originally designed our design program, the decorative signposts that we have in the southern part of Hartford Avenue, they were kind of expensive, so we chose not to put one at the top of Shore Road and Hartford Avenue. When we found we had some funding, we thought it would be a nice idea to have that consistency down the Hartford Avenue. So if you look at December as anticipated, brings us another $116,000 for eligible and $2,324 ineligible. So if you look at the second page.
Frank, can I ask a question before you move on? At the top of page 1.
Yeah.
The BSC, where it says group, and then there's TH, GE, and GI. Can you tell me what the TH
is? TH is Transit Hub.
Okay.
GE, grad eligible.
Grad eligible, yeah.
Okay.
Grad ineligible.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So we have the Transit Hub design and engineering. We also, as with the top of Hartford Avenue and the easement issues to correct the problems we had with the entry to Hartford Avenue, which was something we didn't anticipate, obviously, that actually put a curb on not the town property. That and also found that when we actually surveyed the properties across the street from the church, there was never a survey done when the town purchased it. And we found fences that were on town property that should have been on town property. So we actually finally did an A2 survey on that, which was never done. And that corrects the property lines so we know exactly, where the abutting property owners have their property and where the town property is. It's important. Obviously, we don't want to put planting the trees on someone else's property. Conversely, we don't want to have their fences on our property either. So we had to make those corrections, and that was a purchase that was done a long time ago. So we're making some corrective actions along the way. Up to the end of December, scenario. Scenario 1 is the $400,000 grant, just as it says. Taking out of that $400,000 the eligible costs of $320,801 and the ineligible cost of $43,302, we would have to return back to the state $79,198, and the town would owe $43,302. The town would have to pay $43,302. So we'll go back to page 1 and we'll look at the Q1 anticipated cost for 2022. That would include a little bit additional design work for BSC. Would also include change order 5, which would complete all the amenities in the transit hub and make it fully functional. Some inspections, which are eligible, and contingency, which is also up in the December area too, and retainage from the contractor, retainage. So if you then look at page 2 on scenario 2, we show the $400,000 grant, which gives us $390,159 in eligible costs and $45,627 in ineligible costs. So the town would be returning back to the state a little under $10,000, and it would still be on the hook for $45,000. So what this actually does is kind of show black and white that the town is going to be paying either $45,000 or $43,000.
Okay.
We paid the $43,000. We don't have a completed bus transit hub area. We paid the $45,000. Page 3 actually shows the detail on what goes into each change order. From asphalt curbing to signpost, 3 replacing blacktop corrective action in front of Teddy's, 4, which was signed recently, gives us the East Border Agreement that Zoning Commission and the Tree Commission recommended regarding the northern and border of that property area, planting some trees, and a new fence and an ADA ramp, which was important as far as correcting in front of the church there. Once again, I'll go back and say that we did go to the Tree Commission regarding which trees we had proposed. They had made some changes, so we made those changes. They also asked us to reduce the number of trees, which was fine because they're expensive. And then when we went to zoning, they asked us to redistribute the trees a little bit. So we did redistribution of the trees, which made it work very well as far as the border and the everything that would go for that. Change order 5, which would be the balance of the transit hub, which include the paving, the bus shelter pad, some more sidewalks, landscaping, and some fencing. So what we're actually here to look at is give everybody a clear understanding of where the numbers fall, and hopefully we would be going for an appropriation of $43,000 to $45,000 at the town meeting so that we can cover that delta.
So
you did say that change order 4 has been signed.
Change order 4 has been signed.
Okay.
One of the reasons, Tim and I talked about this at great length the other day. This is planting trees, and we have the opportunity now to get the trees at costs that are better than the half, and get them in the ground so that they will take hold and take root. It's better now to plant them now than is to wait until sometimes, either dead winter or summertime. Can't find trees.
Right.
So we have this opportunity. We did talk to the contractor, and he's willing to hold his cost estimates for the first quarter of next year for us on all the labor and the materials. He doesn't believe there's going to be a marked increase, but we don't have a lot of materials going in on the second part on change order 5. Some concrete and a little asphalt. Everything else is put into change order 4. Big material costs are obviously the trees.
Now, Frank, with respect to the trees, can we get a commitment from the homeowners who will be benefiting from the trees that they will water them? Because I understand trees have to be watered for about a year. You just can't plop them in the ground and hope for the best.
That might be everybody's done well, so I'm not sure what kind of commitment we can get from them, but the part of the contract is that the contractor has to make sure that everything lives.
Yeah, but that probably is not for that length very long. I don't know.
Something to think. We can certainly ask. I don't think there's any harm in asking, but
yeah.
I think we're on pretty firm footing to plant the trees now, especially if we have some nice weather. And he has ordered the trees.
Yeah.
Available. Get them in the ground now.
But we're talking pushing $20,000 worth of trees, so we don't want to have them all.
That is part of his obligation, is to make sure things grow.
Mm-hmm.
And as in household projects, if it doesn't take, they usually come back the next spring and replace it.
I see.
Because that's their obligation.
Well, I remember when we did all the trees around here, we had to really water them for quite a while, and it's an incidental, but it's important.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we found that out with the sod.
Yeah.
Of course, we planted the sod, and we put down the sod, and then, the next day it was 95 degrees. So
yeah, it's brutal.
Tough call at that point.
What would be the anticipated end date for all this to be done? be done? Is there, that's talked about?
It all depends on the weather. Asphalt plants will close if it gets too cold, and they can't pour concrete when it's, multiple days sub-zero. But if we give the contractor the go-ahead, then he's holding the price.
That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Holding the price. So we've done a lot of work on this, and I hope you've seen the designs and the plans and everything. It's going to look very pretty. Certainly better than a vacant lot. And also, it's going to be a paved. And we're going to get people off Route 156. Right now, this will replace 2 bus stops that are right on Route 156. It also falls very nicely into the connectivity grant concept, and we're using alternate transportation. So part of this is some bike racks. We know that the bus service does have bike racks on the buses, so it would be a nice package. Fits all together.
Frank, is the contingency essentially $5,000 in the December category and the 22 quarter 1 category?
Actually, contingency for December and Q1 total $5,000. We had a long discussion regarding what the contingency number should be. The contingency number on the sidewalk portion was much higher. We reduced for this portion. We reduced it for this portion. Contingencies generally are for unknown things that pop up. And if you dig in holes in the ground, unless you have x-ray vision, there's all sorts of unknown stuff. And we did the southern part of Hartford Avenue, we found a whole lot of unknown stuff underground there. The sidewalk, we were concerned, that there could be something that we could hit and not be aware of. We didn't anticipate it because it's just that we were only taking down, inches rather than feet. For the transit hub area, there's very little possibility of utilizing that contingency, in that we're not doing anything but regrading what's there.
Right.
Planting some trees and regrading what's there. So we're not doing any digging, we're not putting foundation holes in, we're not changing street locations or anything of that nature. So the engineer felt very comfortable and very confident that the $5,000 contingency was more than enough. And if I did not include a payback on that contingency on either my 2 scenarios, but if we add that in, that actually pays. We have to put that back into the pot too. So it's another $5,000 that we would owe the state if we don't use it.
Right.
So in essence, it's appropriation for $43,000 and have a half done, or appropriation for $45,000 and have the total package done.
Well, $5,000, when you add the 2 sums of the December and Q1, it's about $186,000, and $5,000 is about 2.7% contingency. It just makes me nervous that it doesn't leave a lot of room for something to go wrong. So,
well, if we go through Q1, if we go to the end of December, which we have purchased, change orders in place for the end of December, we'll know if we're going to use any of that $3,000 contingency at the end of December. We'll know if that $3,000 is going to get used up or not. If it doesn't get used up, it just falls into Q1. That's $5,000. And if you look at what the actual work is going to be performed up there, the actual digging part, where you have finding water lines that don't appear anywhere, old sewer catch basins. You usually find those when you're digging holes. You don't find it when you're grading loam. So once again, the consultant that we use, the engineer we use, very comfortable with this contingency. We didn't ask him to tear it down. We didn't ask him to do anything. We said, what is a reasonable contingency to use on this type of project? They've done a lot of engineering work on it already. So we feel very comfortable, as he feels very comfortable, that this is very adequate contingency. The other thing too is if the state felt as though this wasn't was not appropriate, they would come back and tell us.
Right.
So the state is in with what we're proposing here. Everything we do has to go through state approval and obviously state funding. So they look at all the paperwork, they look at the numbers, they look at the designs, making sure that we're on track doing what we said we're going to do.
The other thing is, in terms of approval, the town meeting is the fourth Monday in January, so that almost eliminates one of the months in Q1. Do you think that you would need a special meeting to get this approved earlier than that?
You know, that obviously that's the board's decision.
Well, it's a cash flow thing. I mean,
cash flow. I mean, it'd be great if we can do a special meeting. I don't know if we have time to do that. I know you need a 10-day, notification period. I think we can put together. I think this in and of itself is a pretty good package. We probably want to go to Board of Finance. Obviously, Board of Finance would want to be weighing in on this for a special meeting. I think that if we can do a special meeting at the beginning of January, that'd be great, or even the end of December. I don't think
something to think about.
So crazy with the
because probably earlier in January you'd need to have a change order 5 executed, not at the end of January.
Right.
So we can think that through.
The sooner the better, obviously.
Yeah.
Martin Lorero's been pretty good to work. They're the contractor record. We should mention also, because Martin Lorero was the contractor that performed the original base part of this project, the state allowed us to make a change order to their contract rather than having to go out to bid again for the balance of the work. So when we did the design and the engineering for the transit hub area, we went back to Martin Lorero with those engineering plans, and they gave us the costs, and of course everything was transmitted to DOT, and everybody was comfortable with what they saw.
So we're okay with approvals through December.
We're good through December, and then the Q1 would be the balance, which would be change order 5, and that's detailed on the last page, which, some apron, concrete aprons that the town engineer revised, changes in the way the aprons, we want to wider aprons, not something wide aprons. The sidewalk from the main sidewalk to the bus shelter, the pad for the bus shelter. Now the bus transit district is going to provide the shelter itself. Mm-hmm. So we had our engineer contact the transit district. These guys talked. They discussed what type of pad needed to be there and the size and everything else. So the pad is going to be built and constructed for the shelter that the transit district is going to provide. Loam and seed, obviously that's pretty straightforward. The pavement area, once again, there was some changes in terms of the pavement pad. So if you look at the bus shelter itself, that little driveway that goes across in front of it, there'll be a bituminous pavement pad there, so when the bus stops, people can get on and off the bus, especially if there's a handicapped person. And also the bus won't make ruts. Because this is a gravel road, essentially. There's going to be an apron on Swan Avenue, an apron on Soundview Avenue, or we'll call it an extension, whichever name we want to use, which we'll figure that out someday. And then there's going to be a section of gravel, and then right in front of the bus shelter there'll be a pad of asphalt there. We went with the gravel because with gravel we wouldn't have to go for a groundwater survey to determine where the wash water would go and things of that nature.
And Frank, how will this be maintained during the winter when we have snow?
They could run a plow through there.
Plow through there?
Yeah, it could be. It's going to be packed gravel. It's not going to be loose gravel.
Okay.
But the other nice thing about it too is it's easily maintained, you know, every now and then you go through and either regrade it or put some more gravel in.
Okay.
The bus shelter is designated for the transit district bus, so we don't anticipate it being used by other than the bus, the little short bus that goes back and forth through the area. And I think they did a survey. I'm not quite sure the numbers. I think it was like 14 or 16 trips a day, and it goes
East and west.
and north. Yeah, east-west.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple bike racks, a bench, and some rope fencing. So that's just like the nautical style rope fencing. We did put on change order 4 the entry bollards, and that is we have the telephone poles that are already down on the site that they're using on the site for bumpers for the cars. So we talked to Lorero and the engineer, so we're going to use those as part of the bollards. So we use a stacked three, you know, like the type thing on the entryway on both sides would be north and south on both roads, and then some roping wrapped. Yep. So it'll be nice.
Excellent.
So I think we covered most of the bases. We've been working on this for quite a few years. We'll put this in there for years. It's not that much, but the committee has been working very diligently with the SCP, spending a lot of time. So I want to say that Mary Jo, as the head of the committee, has really spent a lot of time on working with the committee members to make sure we're going in the right direction.
So Tim, what are our next steps on this?
I think we will present this to the Board of Finance, and I think we need to queue up for the town meeting, or I would say we probably should look at something before the annual town meeting, because if you lose a whole month, you can't sign the contract for number 5, and therefore the contractor can't plan entirely and line everything up. So I think we really need to get a town meeting early in January, a special town meeting, and agree on the number to ask. And if the consensus is the 5,000 is sufficient for the contingency, maybe we'll see as we go through December here how that's doing, but that makes me a little nervous because, you know, it's always better to have more and then not use it than the other way around. So.
But you do have $9,000 in addition, right?
Right.
There's still a buffer of $9,000 beyond that if something happened. As long as it's construction, it would be eligible.
So, to that point, you're still $15,000.
Right. So, do we need to vote to send it to Board of Finance?
Let's see, if we do that, we need a number, and there will be...
Can we round up or no?
Pardon?
Do you usually round up a number, or do you have to do it?
Yeah, more, probably so. I don't think you'd need to have,
I don't know.
Right down to the, I guess, Frank, the number you're coming up was 435,786 on the first page. Is that the sum of everything?
Right.
So he's saying, but ineligible charges is 45,627?
Right, so we'd be looking at 45,600.
Yeah, you go horizontally and get the 435.
Right.
Right.
This is what we need from the town.
Well, we have 400,000 approved for the project, so we need above and beyond 400,000.
Well, we need just the 45,627.
No, because you're only spending 390 of the 400. you have to separate the grant from the spending.
Right, that is the grant. That's going to be
So
covered.
you're underspending 10 here, you're spending 45 here, so the net is 35. So
No.
we have 400 to spend on it. We need 35 more, 35.7 more.
No, because what happens here with the total project is that that's the total project, but we're returning 9,000 additional. You have to add the tack on the 9,000 that has to go back to the state. So this is
No, the 9,000 is, we received the grant from the state, but that's not coming out of, quote, the budget. That's in a deferred revenue position.
Nicole's here. Can I?
You're correct, Martha. You need to,
Yeah.
you need to do an additional appropriation for round up 46,000 for the non-grant expense.
But
Right.
I thought you were saying that the state money is in deferred revenue, and if we don't use it all, we just simply send what we don't use back to them.
That's correct, but there's also 46,000 of ineligible expenses that the town is responsible for.
Yeah, but we have 400,000 in the budget to spend on this thing.
Right, but 45,000 of what we are spending is ineligible. So we still have to cover this in the special appropriation.
Well, I don't think so. If we have 400,000 to spend on the project, eligible, ineligible, now we spend 435, why do we need more than 35,786
Because
technically?
the 435 is the total project. So if you took the 9,000 and you added it to this,
You're talking about giving that back to the state.
but that's part of the reason. You're giving it back to the state because it was for eligible costs that we don't have. We don't have a bill for 9,000, so we have to send
I
them the 9,000
understand,
back.
but if the 400,000 from the state is, you take it out of deferred revenue and put it into revenue as you spend it. If you don't spend the 9,000, you don't have to make an appropriation to send it back, is my point, right?
Yeah, but that's a whole different issue. That's accounting. It's an accounting issue. We still have $46,000 of expenses that we don't have an additional appropriation.
Yeah, but when the carryover, it was 400,000, and if we spend 435 on the whole project, why wouldn't it be we're overspending by the 35,000 or
You're
something?
confusing revenue and expenses here. You're talking one way, we're talking expenditures that do not have appropriation for.
No, I don't.
Basically, we need to take all these and add these up, and that's what we have to pay out of the town.
Well, we're paying them through the 400,000 that's in the budget. That's
Not
my
this.
point.
All
Yes,
this
we
has-
have been.
Yeah, but when it comes down to the final, you have to pay this out of the town. This has to come out of an
If you
appropriation.
use the whole grant, yeah.
Not only, if you don't use the whole grant, we're still going to need 43,000, according to Frank's paperwork. What is it, Kim?
45.
Well, if we didn't finish,
Back 9,800. If you get back 9,800, you still owe 45,600.
right, 45,600 we still need. So we've got to pay that.
I guess I'd like a little more discussion on that, but if you say that's what we have to, if we went for this project and we spent 435 and underused the grant by 9, we need the 35,000 as well as the 9,000 to go back to the state, an appropriation?
Using two different things here.
Well, I personally want a little more understanding of this.
But, so let me ask you a question. If we made a motion today to go to Board of Finance for, say, rounding up, Matt, you said 46?
I would even, I don't know, to not to exceed 50 in case you actually have a little 5,000 in case something happens. I mean, the round number, unless Nicole prefers 40, I don't know how, which you're counting, but I was thinking we'll round it up to 50 in case something does.
And then if we round up to 50,
50,000.
and we don't use it all, the rest would just go back in,
Yeah.
correct?
Well, I was advocating for 50
Well, I think we should do that.
on,
And then we can
different
still
kind.
figure your numbers out when we get to before we get to the Board of Finance meeting. But
Well,
can-
I think 50 is obviously a very safe number. The bottom line is that, you know, the town's gonna write a check out for something. And, you know, right now, our best estimate is 45.6. So, like I said, we'll round it up to 50 and not to exceed. And Nicole, I'll give you a copy of this if you'd like.
So can we make a motion to
yeah,
go
we
to Board
could,
of Finance?
it would be, I think the motion would be that the Board of Selectmen recommends to the Board of Finance the appropriation of an amount not to exceed $45,000,
Well, 50. We just talked about.
$50,000 for the project, including the sidewalk project and the transit hub.
Great. If we do that today, it'll go to the next Board of Finance meeting in December.
Right.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Okay, so we're talking,
Frank, thank you for
and
these numbers.
you're on, you've got that okay? Thank you. Okay, so you've heard it. Any other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Frank.
I'd like
Thank
to
you.
Thank Tim for the hours he and I spent on the phone together, so
Oh, boy.
we got it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
2 down, 10 to go.
And I loved your paperwork and your spread. That was so easy to read.
Thank you.
Grassy Hill, I have made a couple of spreadsheets for you guys. The Grassy Hill project, just to give you a running start, do you all know where this bridge is?
Oh, I do.
Right, Matt?
Right by
Okay.
the firehouse, right?
So it's over an unnamed brook,
Yep.
but nonetheless, it's a very important brook because it's going to cost $1.2 million to do this. So you can see from the spreadsheet, we've undertaken engineering for about 3 years now. And when the engineer had a preliminary estimate, it was $630,000, something like that, for the whole project. But when he did the final design, it basically doubled. Part of that was related to the fact that there is a fair amount of road work that needed to be done between the bridge and Route 1. There'd be some major utility work, and we're told that the utility companies would be obliged to do that at their expense. But there's some issues as to how you move those utilities temporarily and then make them permanent.
So, to clarify, we would move the telephone pole permanently, or we're just going to move it for the construction and then move it back?
If we can situate it where it could be that permanently goes, but that's part of the analysis that the utilities. We've had a couple of meetings. The first suggestion was to move the lines toward Rogers Lake. That would require going across an individual's property and removing trees and so forth. So that might be difficult to get that right away, temporary right away. Once the bridge is done, the wires could perhaps go more or less where they go now, but you have to move them because the boom of the machine swings around and it can't be in the same area. The other possibility is to go on the other side, the pond side, if you will, and whether that could be a permanent location or not, all depends on what they would agree to do.
Okay.
But nonetheless, that's, but some of the road work would be required there, and so obviously this price tag has increased a good deal from the contractor's estimate. We have spent about $100,000, but there's probably another $7,000 to $10,000 to go. And lately, there were some modifications that the Army Corps of Engineers suggested, and it was recommended that we take their suggestions to heart. So the engineering is virtually complete, and we're told that the Corps of Engineers needs to take about a year to evaluate this permit. So that would mean that the construction, if all was a go, would be in the summer of '23. And we're certainly not sure what construction costs and so forth will be years from now, but hopefully they will be similar to what our engineer is talking about. So we had to do, as you can see on the second page in the upper part there, we had to do a little archaeological survey, and some of these later expenses are for different designs that will require. So there's no real, what was agreed with the Board of Finance is that the increase in engineering above the original estimate will be put through the Selectmen's engineering budget with the expectation that before the end of the fiscal year, this would be quantified and there would either be a budget transfer as part of the budget process or perhaps even an appropriation, but probably at year end we have the transfer activity, and it might be able to just take that out of the Selectmen's.
So that would be the $7,145.11?
Yeah, if it were that number, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they've agreed to monitor it going forward, and we're hoping that the engineer is pretty much at the end of these charges. When we go to the next step, then we need to go out for bid and all that. And the grant is a 50% grant. I'm not sure whether some of the current infrastructure money might come into play if it were to be distributed as it was for the American Recovery. Maybe they'd give each town certain largesse. I don't know. That's speculation. But being that there is a grant, we have to make sure that any new grant would be compatible with an existing grant. But it would be helpful if this price increase could be mitigated by something like that.
So the 50% grant, do we have to use it by a certain time?
I think because the way it's been going, we have requesting extensions. It's difficult because a lot of the DEP folks are still working from home, and you get answers. When we asked our contact about providing us with written confirmation about that the state would up the project and up the 50% grant, as well as confirm the extension, he more or less said that he was not in a position to do that because it was not that high on his priority list. So other than some emails saying, yeah, you should be good, there's nothing that says you are fine. You know, here's your written commitment, which is just uncomfortable. But, you know, we've spent our engineering and we don't have to do anything more for the time being, but we need to get that part of it set up so that we have, based on the engineer's design. I suppose as we go through 22, we will need to get a fresh look at what the anticipated estimate will be for construction costs a year from now.
So steps are, the engineer is going to finish up,
Yeah.
and then it has to go to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they say a year, but it could be less either way. It could be a year, it could be less.
That's what he was estimating, which
Okay.
is, and then he was thinking if we could start in the summer, basically, or late spring of '23, we would basically have 2 fiscal years to play with in terms of funding our share of the cost.
I thought I heard, I might be wrong, but I thought I heard at one of the Board of Finance meetings, didn't we put some money aside for this project at one point? We started to save, and then last year we took it out, and we didn't save last year or something like that?
Yeah, the Board of Finance didn't act on anything last year for the budget.
But there is something from a previous year that we've put aside some money? 300,000?
Yeah, I think we have some grant sources. Well, we have the grant money, which would be the state's 50%. They'd have to freshen that up. And then I've got to review what we have actually on hand. But we would have to have, if it was towards 600,000, we'd have to have that amount
So we have
available.
So we have about 600,000 that we put aside in previous budget years for this project.
There was probably estimate of 300,000 would be town share and 300,000 for the state grant, total 6 and change.
Okay, so we only put aside, we're only thinking that we put aside 300,000.
I don't know if we have all that. I'd have to talk.
Well, do we have anything put aside for this?
We have about 590 put away prior years. We had to spend the whole thing, and then we get reimbursed by 50%.
Okay, so we've got 590.
Yeah, that's what we got
But
originally.
of that, 50% is to go for the state part and 50% for the town part.
Roughly.
So they would be in for 590 as well.
No, that would be the total.
We put 590 because
But
the
600.
whole thing was we thought it was going to cost
Yeah.
600,000, so we put all of it in because we have to pay all the front costs.
Okay,
So as we come around the corner, if we had a new estimate, if we had roughly 300 that we could use for our share, and we needed another 300 in the fiscal '23 budget, we could do 150. In the fiscal '24 budget starting July 1 of '23, we could do the second shot, because the project would likely go through that whole summer, over 2 fiscal years.
so do you think it's going to cost 600,000, or do you think it's going to cost closer to $1 million?
The estimate is $1.2 million from the engineer, meaning that the town needs 6, and the state would do 6. So
Think of it as that we have to budget the growth. So if it's 1.3, we have to have 1.3 in our budget for expenditures, and then down the road, we'll get half that back.
So
The growth.
we should be putting like 300,000 away for 2022.
if we want to, to show it, to show
And
it
then
on a
300.
gross basis,
And then 300 in 2023.
If you already have 590, yes, yeah.
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 Okay, so that would, so you'll put that into the budget to reflect?
Yeah, we've got to make sure, and hopefully we don't get any rude surprises, but this was it was the $1.2 million was their probable cost type of thing.
Okay, so we need 613 total for us, but we got to put it all together anyway. Matt, do you want to see this, just so that you'll have a copy, look at it?
Sure.
So I don't know what the chance is that,
So do we have to do anything to get it to the Army Corps of Engineers, or does the engineering firm move it forward?
they've met with the DOT and the Corps of Engineers a couple months ago, and so I think it should be, if not.
So we don't have to act on anything to get it there?
No motions or anything.
Okay.
the transfer station scale house, the scale house has heat and water, and the move by the personnel should be this week, end of the week. It's being built by the same company that built the Haynes Park restroom building, and so it's coming along. I'm sure there's been Mr. Ruddy and company will be very relieved when they can move in. Working out of that small building in a difficult situation, but so we're hopeful that the counters are going in and, some incidentals, but should be moved. The move should occur this week.
And then they take the temporary building away?
Yeah, that'll go to Public Works garage area somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. And the funding for that is separate from the funding for the construction, the removal and so forth. So we're hoping this can be all done there'll be a couple loose ends, but, for the most part, they can start using it.
Because we had done an appropriation for that, right? So they came in under budget or at budget?
It's going to be right about budget, I think. There's not going to be much wiggle room. Because you had subcontractors for HVAC, plumbing, electric, the scale, and then the contractor did the building, meaning the sheetrock and the whole inside, painting it and all that.
The appropriation, I think, was what, like around
163?
63, 69, something like that, I thought. Okay, 163. Okay.
All right. The Ferry Road sidewalks. Tomorrow the committee is meeting to hear the report from the engineer about what impact the sidewalk will have on tree roots. The north side of the street is where the sidewalk is now, and the committee will make a recommendation in a short order as to which side. I think it looks like it would be the north side, but until we hear from the public and so forth. So what will happen is, if the engineer thinks that there will be required, we think, about 4 trees removed, 2 of which are little small things, but 2 are larger ones. So we're eager to hear what the engineer says about going over top of the roots, because I think we've heard that the sidewalk typically needs a 5-inch panel and then probably an 8 to 10-inch base under the panel. So when going over the roots, if they're really close to the surface, you need to ramp up and try to get, I think the very minimum would be something like 8 or 9 inches over top. So if the roots are basically right there, you can do things called root pruning, root shaving, that sort of thing. But obviously you can't just cut them off and install the sidewalk panel the way you normally would. So by maybe sloping up, coming over, and being a little liberal on the depth, you can avoid the severe damage that would otherwise happen. So once he reports, the tree warden will be present, and we will then hear from the tree warden what he thinks. For any removals, they need to be posted, and a public hearing can happen if people want, but we would intend to have a public hearing that would be a combination of about what trees are to be removed, but also about what the public comment is. And I think the reason that the north side likely makes sense is that for the pedestrians walking a circuit, they tend to stick on Ferry Road, the north side, up Lieutenant, back Academy, back down Lime Street, and they stay on that inner loop. They don't cross over to the Congregational Church side and then walk down to Lieutenant River Lane and cross there. Part of the apprehension is that when you're down at Lieutenant River, you're crossing the street, but people coming from 156 up Ferry Road, they maintain an aggressive speed sometimes. And so people walking across the street at that side, at that spot, it wouldn't be an ideal situation. Also, just past the church, you have about 3 houses that are very, very close to the sidewalk. And it's hard to say how many people cross the street and walk along there anyway. There is no sidewalk there now, but there's like a little path you can see that people use. So undoubtedly people do for church and other things. They walk there. We spoke to all the abutters, and the consensus was predominantly having it on the north side. And apart from a couple of properties, as you approach Lieutenant River Lane, coming down Ferry Road, there's a flat area where there's no heaving at all from the trees. So we would probably take those panels out, put a similar panel back, even though it might be less than the 4 feet. You can do that if you don't go a certain length, but just so you don't have to disturb the roots by having a wider sidewalk panel, if you will, because what's there they've adjusted to and grown around and so forth. So we'll hear from the tree warden, and then the committee will have the hearing and then make a decision a recommendation back to the Board of Selectmen, and then that could start the process to advertise it, get a contractor ready to go, probably by March and through that time frame, and then they could hopefully knock it out. It won't be a very long job, according to the engineer, so we can get that, find out what an estimated budget is, and we do have a steep grant, $126,000, and the town has to put in $24,000, total of $150,000. Mm-hmm. We had money in the budget before the steep grant, and so we need to make sure where our numbers are, so that when we actually start advertising and so forth, we know what we have and so forth. We don't have an estimate of probable cost at this point. Because of the tree activity, there has been work on the part of, I think that the tree commission got a report on all the trees and what would be the impact, and then there's been meetings about what to do and meeting with the homeowners and so forth. So there has been some, and if there are tree removals, which we know there would be at least 4, that is a cost that was not anticipated at the beginning. So we may have to revisit where we are and adjust the number as necessary. So, but I think getting this recommendation of the tree warden and then moving with the hearing, and then we can get into the first quarter and things should start to happen, and we'll refine the budget and hopefully get a good bid and on we go. But it's challenging dealing with the pre-existing conditions that exist there, primarily the tree roots. I think the neighbors are fine with the concept of new sidewalk panels and so forth, but in terms of saving the trees, there's a lot of emotion.
So have we put any money aside for that 24K, towards that 24K?
Well, the budget has the old budget has 100, after the engineering fees we paid so far, it's about 112,000. So if we think that there would be a need for additional funding, we would probably have to do it via a town budget versus or an appropriation instead of trying to change the steep. Because I think we could be on firm ground to talk to the state about putting in more town money for some of the tree activity and so forth. And this has been going on for a while, so we want to check the numbers for the probable cost as well. But it all depends on how much tree work there has to be, and also what the estimated cost of the contractor would be.
Okay.
The senior center expansion, I don't know if the selectmen have seen the overall plan that Point One Architects put together. There were two options. Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Matt, did you see it? I've labeled them option 1, option 2, schematics, and so they've been working on surveys and so forth, and they've given information to Point One, and Point One has taken the information and created spaces that are expandable, contractible, orient some of the activity toward either High Hopes or toward the soccer field, lacrosse fields. And it's a beautiful plan for sure. However, the cost is going to range, according to them, between 3.4 and 3.8 million. So far the engineering costs have been funded about 50% by the two towns and 50% by an allocation from the Senior Center Board of Directors. So that was a total of $30,000. So obviously, once we have these schematics, then what are we going to do next? Mm-hmm. We also are aware that Regional District is also coming up with some hefty numbers for school buildings and so forth. So I think that the Senior Center will be looking toward some grant possibilities. I think there are examples of other communities that have received some pretty nice grants for a Senior Center expansion. So as to what the communities of Lyme and Old Lyme would need to think about, why net of a grant, we don't know. I think that size of a number would be challenging to be able to digest at this point, but obviously when you look at the details there, it's a pretty substantial redo. And I know there's not been much that's happened there since 1995 when it was built. So the seniors say it's our turn. We shall see.
It looks a little weary inside.
Yeah.
Looks a little weary. he needs a little bit of an
Yeah.
update. But I think, I spoke to Jerry Baker last night about something else, but I think she's going to present this to the line Board of Selectmen on December 18th. And then
Okay.
she said she was going to ask you to put her on the agenda for a future meeting with all of us.
Okay, yeah, and it's apropos because it may be that we need to understand the sequence of events. If they need to go to more detailed drawings, I guess you'd choose one of the plans if you think one of them was suitable, or I guess the group could say, well, we'll tinker with it and do something else. But I don't know that you're really going to have, if you want to make a major renovation, I don't know that you can tweak it much and save $1 million or anything. So I think if this is where it's going, then if there were grant possibilities, that would be pretty great. But let's see.
Okay.
Next is the Swan Brook outlet. This has been an ongoing problem for years. You all know where that is, Martha?
I haven't been there, but
Okay.
I'll go on a field trip soon.
Well, if you know where the cross lane joins 156,
Yep.
the brook is under the railroad tracks a little to the east of there, and it's kind of, near Teddy Pizza, and it comes under 156, and it goes down basically between Miami and Hawks Nest. And as it gets down toward the water, there is a Hawks Nest Beach Club Association property beach, which is more or less in front of part of Miami Beach. And Swan Brook is a trench, but at that point it enters two 36-inch pipes on the north side of the beach and exits on the south side of the beach with like a big wing wall, concrete structure to hold the pipes. There has been constructed a wood, I call it a wood crib, two wooden walls that are probably, when they were built, were maybe 6 feet tall, 6-7 feet tall above the sand. And they're slightly wider than the pipe thing, but they go out on a slight angle to the southwest. And the wave action and so forth, just over time, 10 years, the things are pretty dilapidated, which they are right now, the wing walls, the crib. So we met with Miami Beach, the Hawks Nest Beach Club people, and the question came, well, who owns this? Because it's a couple of pipes under a beach, and after a bit of research, we determined that the town put the pipes in the 40s, and because nobody else would maintain it, we have maintained this wood crib situation a couple of go-arounds.
So did the wood crib go in at the same time as the pipes?
Doubtful. I'm not sure. I think the pipes at one point were actually further up on the shore, on the sand, and to keep it away from the water. So there's a debate as to whether the pipe should not be at high tide in the water. So I'm not sure how long the crib has been in existence, but Macnick Brothers has replaced it a couple of times, and because of the way it faces the sand, and wind can blow sand into the wood crib, and just last week I went down there, the sand covered the entire, both pipes, and was up above it, so they were completely closed. So when we talked to the engineer, Daco, there was a suggestion that instead of having the wood crib rebuilt the way it is, that number one, it be made out of sheet pile, which is 25-foot sections of galvanized steel. They're probably close to 2 feet wide, and you see them in marinas.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the Rogers Lake Dad had them driven on the lakeside. So they interlock, and he was saying if they were driven and stuck up the way they do now, that they'd be good and durable. And he said as opposed to just having them go out the same way, have the right one, the west one, curve a little bit to stop the sand from coming in. Now, a skeptic would say that the sand will build up and maybe overflow it, or that if the wind comes from the east, that the sand could come into the metal crib from that angle. So there's, if we were to entertain a redo, we want to make sure that the design is going to work well. So we've been back and forth and back and forth. There was a gentleman who is one of the Miami Beach officials he deals in pipes and cleaning them out. And he said to clean out, the western pipe has been chronically plugged. The eastern one flows, but when you get the sand, like I told you, nothing flows. But there's pressure, and so once you get a little bit of an opening, the sand will flow out. But the west one seems to have more impaction than the other one. So to get the sand out, I think you have to go in from the sound side with a high pressure, like a pressure washer type thing, and blast the sand out. And he said to do that would be about $15,000. I said, holy Christmas. So I think at one time, within the last 3 or 4 months, there was a lot of rain, and actually both pipes were opened up. So you hate to spend a bunch of money and then they plug up again, which is what's been happening. So I think we had a meeting down there and really say if we need to get something going here, because when it's the houses in the areas that are low, and they've been filled in a lot over the years. Miami Beach has been, it used to be called Pond Road for a reason. Now there's no pond. So if there's a flow of water coming down, but it can't get out, then it's going to go around Miami Beach. So it's not a good situation.
Is it the same brook that runs behind my house?
What's that?
Does that run all the way up behind my house, that brook?
Yeah, it actually...
Cross lane to Mile Creek?
Yeah, it comes down cross lane. Probably, I don't know if there's where the pipe starts north of the bridge,
yeah.
But you might know better. It might, maybe just water comes from the well fields and so forth.
I think it actually goes behind my house.
Oh, yeah.
Where I am, and then it shoots down underneath Mile Creek.
Oh, okay.
Towards you, but I'm pretty sure on the map that Swan Brook is behind my house as well.
So it's open at that point? Or
It's only open, it's basically mud when it's 3 seasons out of the year, but you get a good rain, and we've got a babbling brook. But it's dry.
So there's no pipe structure where you are?
No, there are under the roads. Under Nottingham. There's 2 places on Nottingham that have pipes under the roads.
Are there any pipes going by you?
There's a pipe that goes underneath Champlain, but I know the town drains into that pond, I guess you could say, across the street from my house.
But it's not a fixed pipe carrying the water till probably further down toward the fire station?
Yeah. Well, there's a pipe that goes underneath Champlain behind my house. It runs between me and number 3 Champlain.
And that's where the fixed pipe starts?
I think so, yeah. I'm not sure. I think it's farther down. Almost like that goes underneath the road that goes into the Connecticut water property there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's down farther down there.
So it's bringing down a lot of water from that whole area.
Mm-hmm.
When we were kicking around funding and so forth, as part of the ARPA, they talked about water sewer, and under the water category, they talked about stormwater. And the brook does receive stormwater from Hartford Avenue, the catch basins there, south of Bocce, I guess, because I think the ones north of Bocce are just sumps. But, so, water coming down Hartford Avenue, at Pond Road, it makes a right and goes all the way to, enters into the brook.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, 156, there's drainage that puts it into the brook. Now, whether that would be sufficient to have it qualify for a program, I don't know. And of course, I think the ARP money is supposed to be COVID related, so you'd have to connect the dots and see if what you're doing would be eligible. And when I talked with Courtney's office and the OPM, nobody would say, yeah, that project sounds like it would work. They make general statements, but nothing. So I don't know. If the problem is that the opening is so bad at this point that to wait another season for something to happen would be really bad, because the wood crib is basically nearly disintegrated. And so I guess your three choices: you do nothing until you find a nice grant source, you do a town appropriation, or you wait to see whether the infrastructure money might have some funds available.
So is this a project where we'd have to pull in, I'm sure we'd have to pull in deep, but also Army Corps of Engineers, wouldn't they have to approve this?
I think if we stick with what we have, with minor modifications, you can get a certificate of permission, and that is less time-consuming and complex than a DEP permit.
Okay.
A permit would be needed if you say we're going to move the whole thing closer to Miami Beach and have an open situation, or we're going to have it go out into the Sound another 100 feet, something of that sort. That would require a permit, and that's about 18 months according to our engineer. If you stick with the crib concept and bend it maybe, he thinks that would be eligible for a certificate of permission, which they must act on in 90 days. So that would be, much better. But the funding would be probably, to do it that quickly, you're either looking at ARP money or town money and no grant. So the back of the envelope estimate was about $150,000 to construct the sheet pile type thing.
But that's just a word of mouth estimate.
Not to have a grant.
No, I mean, we don't have a real RFP, we just have...
No, the engineer did a couple things. He came down and said, if you moved it closer to the boundary of Miami Beach and had it open and put some kind of a very unusual matting there, then a machine could maintain it if it got sand and stuff in it. The difficulty would be, though, if you had a big storm, it's just a river looking to go inland. So I don't know how that would work out.
Will those two beaches have people that come and clean them daily or weekly or whatever?
During the season, Nick,
During the season,
yes.
someone that comes through there and cleans them or rakes them out every year, every season?
Harry Plout, doesn't he do the beach cleaning for all those beaches?
Yeah, but the beach cleaning wouldn't maintain...
No, I know that, but will it interfere? Is that where you were going?
Yeah, I was wondering,
The swale?
they talked about this mat thing. Is it something they just come by and they,
Well, I think if there was a swale on the boundary of Miami and Hawks Nest, you'd just clean up to it. But then you'd need a machine probably to maintain it so that as sand blew into it or stuff came in from the sound, why they need to. Now, he said if you stop short of the sound, you might not require DEP's involvement, so, but I don't know.
I just think that if you're going to do a curvature wall, that means you're going to change the flow of water, which is going to change, if water's going out, it's going to affect, I mean, there's always a domino effect somewhere with water. So if you move the water one way versus the other, there's going to be a domino effect, whether to a beach, for erosion, or buildup.
Yeah, it goes out about 25 or 30 feet. And so the normal flow is not that much in a big flow, but...
Well, the normal flow is with a clogged pipe, though.
Yeah, and the concern would be if the sand somehow overpowered the curved part and came in anyway. Because when you have a machine, the boom has to go over top and dig. It's not like you can have the machine come inside the crib and dig and drop the sand over the side or something. You know, so it's tricky. And so I think we need another session to have the engineer say this will work. Because you know, if you spent that kind of money and it didn't work, then it'd be very difficult.
Right.
So this is a tough one because the need is now, and
so he hasn't designed anything yet.
He's done some
sketches.
Yeah, basically, and just the concept of this piling. So I think if we can get him before Christmas to look at this, because even if we did the certificate of permission, that's 3 months, that means March into April, and then do the work. So, you know, to get it for the season, because people are getting a little fed up with the hazardous wooden structure that's there. Understandably, it's... Do
we have any liability issues with this wooden structure?
I suppose if some
child or...
I suppose if some child went on it, you know, you would think it normally you wouldn't think anyone would want to climb on it because it's... But people as they are, if somebody were to be injured on it, then yeah, I mean, we've removed things that are patently dangerous, but still. So anyway, we'll get a meeting and try to get a plan.
Are you thinking having a meeting down there again?
Oh, yeah.
So you'll invite us?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Great field trip. I like this. Okay. All right.
Town of Mahaig. But I placed a call to her to see if she might orchestrate a meeting with some of the Colt Lane or other neighbors that would that have been very interested in this, to get some opinions. We have talked with the owners of the abutting property. As you know, they maintain that after they've done some title research, they think actually they own the property. We are not agreeing to that. And if we persist and they persist, then ultimately there's going to be a lawsuit, and it's going to take probably several years and several $1,000s, maybe several tens of $1,000s to work it out. There's a case in line that town council is aware of, and it's been going on for quite a while and very expensive. I know the emotion's very high about this, so I think that if it costs the town a fairly substantial sum, I think a lot of people would figure it's worth it. So the alternative would be to say, okay, if we had a meeting with folks who live in the area and have the most interest in it, what do they think would be the minimum access? Right from the letter that we sent to the owners, abutters, is that the town landing would have 2 parking spaces down toward the water, if you will. There's a thing called the ice house.
Yep.
So there were to be 2 spaces where 2 cars could park, and then further cars would have to park up and near the pillars in front, out on the pavement, out on Tanamahaig, if you will. They claim that they have had some very uncomfortable occasions where people have come down and they're not just walking down to look at the view, they kind of hang around, and they've been very disturbed by, not everyone, they welcome people on foot and that sort of thing, but there have been some people in cars that particularly hung up on the cars being down where they're staring at the house. So I think it's worthy of getting opinions on it. Our position was there would be signage saying it's town landing. As you come in, you would not go left on their driveway. You would make a right, follow the town landing road. At the bottom, it loops around toward the house again, so it's a circle type of pattern. And so granted, the town landing is somewhat skinny, but you could have the 2 parking and signage, and that would be that. So if we, the attorney was suggesting if we had a standstill agreement where the town would not keep pushing on its ownership claim and they wouldn't keep pushing on their ownership claim, but you could work out the details of how to operate the landing property, that might save time and money. But I know that many people feel that the parking is important, and so if we have to test the pulse, I guess, and see.
So do you want to have a meeting here with the residents of that area?
Either here or maybe at the library or something. I think it would be useful to have the Colt Lane people as a group. You know, you could have it here. I guess
some from Littlefield too, the people at the end of Littlefield.
Yeah, the environs, right. I think it would be valuable to have their input as opposed to just an open forum where anyone who wanted to come could come. And that, not to say that that couldn't happen as well, but it was suggested that, because there was some discussion about deeded rights in some of the Colt Lane property land records. Now, I think as a member of the public, one can go onto town property without deeded rights. You know, if you wanted to go to any town property, you don't need a special, something in your deed to have you do that. So we've not seen a deed that shows this is my deeded rights. And whether that would give you any additional leverage, power, I don't know. So that would be interesting.
So do you want to do an invitation only kind of thing?
I think it would be if Sheila offered to contact people and maybe have a meeting, we have to be sensitive to the fact that if it's a municipal function, you know, the public is allowed to come, and I think it would be fruitful to have primarily the people from those areas and hear their opinions because they're closest to it, and if they have these deeds and so forth.
So would Jack, with our town attorney, present this, or who would be the moderator of this?
If it becomes like a selectmen's forum, then I think it's open to the public. I think it's tough to restrict it, honestly.
But are you suggesting, so would our town attorney be there?
I think it would be valuable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
there's a delicate balance between having a public meeting, but trying to have it for the benefit of the immediate people who live there type of thing. So needs a little
Or if Sheila just calls a meeting, then she can invite who she wants.
True. And then you get into a quorum situation if 3 of us showed up.
Yeah. So it's probably better if we went to a public meeting with the interested parties. Do you agree?
Yeah, I guess you might be able to structure it to say the meeting will be primarily to hear from the immediate neighbors, and then following that, there'd be perhaps public comment or something. Sort of like we do here.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to submit people, but the mission would be to hear from the immediate neighbors for the most part, and
so would you want that to be the beginning of this month or the beginning of January?
I guess this month is winding down, but it could be this month if it was some evening and we had it here with the understanding that the primary time would be devoted to the neighbors, and then it could be opened up and it would last for such and such a time type of thing. I think you could. We're getting into the various Christmas parties and all that stuff, so... Well,
weekdays are easier, I think.
We could pick some dates, and if the invitees had too many commitments, then we could say, we're not getting the group we'd like, so we'll wait. But it's quiet now, and it's going to get quieter in the first quarter, so, but it would be worthwhile, I think. So I'll work on that. I'll talk to Jack, and I think that would be a fruitful thing. I think if we had neighbors, but it would be as part of a public meeting.
Right.
With maybe the first part of the meeting being devoted to those who live in the immediate area there. Okay. The American Recovery Plan.
I have not yet.
Okay. I know, Mary Jo. Do you want to come up and comment what's going on recently, or? All right. So we have around a dozen people who are members of the committee. I think the committee's met probably 4 or 5 times, and as I understand it, they're developing a survey that residents could complete and return.
We got that today.
Oh, okay.
We got the draft version to try out.
Okay.
So Matt, I think you might have been on it. Tim.
To our town email?
I got it in my personal email from Cheryl Poirier. It's just to see if there's any bugs in it. We're trying to just try it out, and then she would make any revisions that she has to do.
Okay.
And then go forward with that.
So I know there have been a number of requests that have been received by the town. I think hopefully they've been documented so that we know. For instance, the Shoreline Soup Kitchen wants a refrigerated truck with a lift gate, and I think Ledge Light wants a percentage, and the COG wants a percentage, and so forth and so on. So there's some documented requests. I think towns are having they probably recommended the Board of Selectmen certain parameters, and then there's a town meeting, and if the town meeting approves the general plan, then the Board of Selectmen, along with the committee, can work on the details of specific amounts. The COG has identified a committee that's part of the Middlesex Chamber that could assist with underwriting business-type requests. If if desired, and I guess the Community Foundation has had a conversation. So there's a number of things going on that would play into it. The committee was initially put together bringing emergency management, social services, arts and tourism, selectmen, finance. I think there's a ledge light and just some members at large, but try to get input from a variety of sectors. I think the ARPs talks about either grants or loans to businesses, nonprofits, people, and then certain projects. And they're supposed to be related to COVID. So I guess if the way this is going, probably the first quarter, maybe there'll be some ability to get a little, either, I don't know whether the concept is have a percentage of the proceeds be allocated to different types of things or dollar amounts, just what, but ultimately we need to get town meeting approval, I believe, for the big picture and then start working on the details. So I guess some towns have already started dispersing some funds, so the sooner the better, but we have 2 years to do this, and then 2 additional years to actually fund it, so 4 years. So it's a challenge to do it right. It's like winning the lottery and all your friends and family come around and say, help me out. So you'll be going on. And
I will. And Mary Jo, can I just ask Mary Jo, when is the next meeting? Next Wednesday?
The 15th.
15th. Thank you very much.
the 15th, okay.
At noon? Yep.
Okay. Very good.
And Cheryl and I, and Sherry Cody all attended the ARPA workshop at CCM last week. So we did get some ideas, and
good.
We'll share those at the meeting.
Yeah, I've been taking articles out of the paper about, different people doing different things, so I'll try to put that together. Estuary Transit. There is let's see, the Estuary Transit has presently involved, and they're pretty much south of Middletown. And there is a merger that will be happening in a not too distant future, hopefully. It's taken quite a while to get all the pieces put together because you have DOT plays a very significant role, a major funding role in orchestrating this. But the initial would be that the Middletown transit area, which I believe consists of Middletown, Durham, and Middlefield, I think, would merge, and then perhaps other towns in that area, such as Portland, maybe Cromwell, not sure who else, but there could be 3 or 4 more towns that would join, and so it would be akin to the Connecticut River Council of Government territory. This makes sense because the very small transit districts are going to have a hard time going forward. 9 towns here, 4 or 5 towns there. It's just not feasible. So the director of the Estuary Transit, Joe Comerford, will be the director of the larger unit. The funding looks very promising at the moment. Estuary Transit has always had some very good financials and good balances and well run. Middletown has had more difficulty. There would be a facility in Middletown near the Aragoni Bridge where they would have a maintenance facility and an office, and there would be another location. Right now they're operating out of Centerbrook, but I think there will be announced at some point a new location down on the shoreline for a maintenance facility. So there'd be two. And so it's been very, very technical and complicated. The Transit District has insisted on having akin to a memorandum of understanding executed by the commissioner, because we felt it would be important to have the highest levels approving this and involved, and because there's so much financing and they're going to own real estate that the unit, the new entity will use and everything else. So it's coming along, and it should hopefully happen during calendar 22, not just sure what a trigger date might be, but it'll be bigger and better, more routes, more, and they've run some. This past summer they ran buses down to Hammonasset, and that was fun. They had kind of open air things when it was nice, and so there's a lot of good stuff going on. And it gets back to the Soundview with the bus shelter there. It would be hoped that people, even on weekends, could utilize the buses and put a bicycle on the front of it and so forth and get around. So this is coming along. It's been slow and difficult, but it's going to happen.
Okay.
Next is the Ames open space. This has not actually gone to town meeting. I've been trying to reach Amanda Blair, the chairman, to understand where we are. But it's 35 acres off of Whippoorwill in the vicinity of Jericho. And this would be added to existing Ames property. I think it's around 70 some odd acres. So push that up to over 100. And it would be an excellent access to the property. The only viable access other than this proposed access is one off of, you go in a boggy hole, and then you get on to Evergreen, and there's a little place to go in there. The other access formerly was off of Whippoorwill, near where Ned Pfeiffer's garage is there. But because of the beaver situation, there's a lot of water, and it's not really pedestrian friendly. So there's been some administrative thing, and I'll have to figure out, ask Amanda where we stand with that, but hopefully it can be part of the annual town meeting. Because the purchase price is set, the money is set, there's going to be some grant funding, I think half of it, there's an application for grant funding. So it's been a long process, and hopefully this will get together here and happen.
That already came before the Board of Finance, correct?
Yeah.
So they've already approved it for town meeting.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And then we're just waiting for Amanda and company to say, let's go. Okay.
Great.
Also, they are meeting this week. The application was pulled in November, and I think some of the modifications can be incorporated into the plan, into the documentation, and the committee will ultimately vote on it. And because you have these 65-day clocks that start when you submit something, And you can do, I think, 2, I'm not sure about 3. But in talking at the committee the last month, they're going to regroup and get this put together in a better way, and so there'll be, they also will need some additional funding, because I think hiring anybody to do things, that the money that they had has been principally spent, and they'll need another allocation.
And where will that come from?
They'd have to be approved by the Board of Finance.
Okay.
And ourselves.
So they come to us and present what they need?
The what?
They come to us and present what they need, and then we...
Yeah, they would say, okay, we want to move in this direction. I think if they don't, I'm not sure what kind of money they have to spend. If it's sent to zoning, if there's not too many comments and so forth, maybe, I'm not sure what their next steps are, where they would need funding, but they took over some funding. I think it was in like 48,000, if I'm not mistaken. And so BSC, which is the firm that did Soundview Sidewalk, they've been working with them.
So they may need additional money from BSC,
right? Because
they need to rewrite basically the zoning application. They need to rewrite.
Yes.
What they're expecting.
And after that, I'm not sure what, because then when you start looking for the public improvements, they were saying that they needed to have grant applications sent in for some of that public improvement, sidewalks for the most part. And that gets you into the boat bridge, perhaps, which is a big deal, and pedestrian crossing and improvements to Halls Road were to be used the way they're talking about. They were talking about parking on both sides.
And then they have to get
a median of some sort, protecting the parking from the general traffic.
And then they have to get DOT approval for all that too. Yeah. Okay.
And I think ultimately they're going to need a survey of the property, because I think there's a general idea as to where the DOT property stops, but probably there would have to be a survey similar to what was done in Soundview.
Okay.
But the grant application, which would be similar to what was done down in Soundview, if we could get, but if the max is say 600,000, you'd have to do it in phases, because I think they had about a $2 million budget for the whole length of Halls Road.
For sidewalks. For sidewalks.
And improvements, yeah.
The lighting.
Lighting. The bridge might be in there. I think the bridge was a couple of hundred, maybe.
Okay, so,
but of course, as they get into really applying for stuff, you could have a separate allocation. I don't know that in the short term they would say, we need such and so forth. They might say, we need X number of dollars for BSC to bring it to the next level for a grant application. And if the grant were approved, then you'd be back saying, so the public improvements could be more immediate depending on the funding and so forth. And who knows, if this infrastructure money were available, that might play a role too.
So the next step would be that Edie would have to come to us for approval for an allocation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 steps for this whole thing, I don't know if they've had it. I think they did talk about a phasing. They also would like to do an agreement with the Graybills with respect to where the hangry goose is. I think they'd like to have some sort of a walking area along the shore toward Florence Griswold to gain access to that. And I think the Grabels might be interested in doing that. So that would be another facet. So we'll be hearing more about that.
Great.
Soundview Beach, we had some big work on that last summer, talking about the parking situation, how late things would be open, Miami Beach's plight with respect to allowing the public on the beach, but getting no money from the public to help pay the bills. And so I think that's going to be something that we need to work hard on in the first quarter here, coming around the corner, because we talked about it a good bit last year, and I know there are two different opinions. I know the trooper was not in favor of just leaving the lot open till 9 o'clock with no supervision. And then if it was to be supervised, it was open till 8 o'clock as a kind of a compromise. And then he thought it would be imperative to have, say, a ranger or a policeman nearby so that it wouldn't just be chaos in there from his perspective. So that's one perspective. The other perspective is the merchants would like it to be open till 9 o'clock so that their patrons can come down and park easily and go to stuff. So that's unfinished business. Parking costs, there was a survey, and some towns are charging $50 a day, and what's a fair price to charge? Certainly Miami Beach, if you take pity on Miami Beach, we help them with our rangers and police. So we try to itemize the kinds of expenses that we bear on this. And police is huge, but we enumerated all that, and there was a group that did some work on it so we can blow the dust off of that. I don't think you can really charge to get money back for everybody, but there are, of course, when you have the town lot, you have people who have parking passes that can park for free. And there are, I think, 10 spots available for townspeople who go down there and park. But if the 11th person comes in and there's space available, they can park beyond where the 10 spots are. Of course, if you had a huge amount of townspeople parking there, then you would not get much additional revenue because they paid for parking passes already. The private lots operate, I think it's 7 private lots in the Soundview area, and they are charged by the town a fee per vehicle space for the summer. So if they have 40 lots and they're charged, say, $35 or something of that sort, then we have that revenue.
So you're telling me they pay $35 for the 40 lots total?
No, per vehicle space.
Okay.
And that hasn't been adjusted much. Now, some people's lots are further away from the beach than others. So people who are, say, on Swan, halfway up the street, they don't get a lot of action, where somebody who's down where the town parking lot is on Portland, they get a pretty good action probably. So then there was questions about when are the gates closed to Soundview? Are they closed too soon, or are they closed to stop the influx? So there's just a lot of different things to deal with. We have undoubtedly a number of people who park cars to say, come on in, and wave them in. They're not legitimate parking lots, but they get people to pay, sometimes exorbitant amounts to park on their personal property. And then, of course, people park in the state rest area. I've seen them down near the Black Hawk River and walking to Soundview from there. On a terrific day, it's amazing. So this is unfinished business. We need to get this going again and talk about what the posture is about the parking lot, how late it stays open, how it's operated. What about Miami Beach? I think it's patently unfair that they have to pay for security and sanitation, and the public bears no responsibility to help pay for that. And they have town taxes, their own mill rate, and if the beach is deemed, during COVID, when there was a restriction on how many people could be there, if the out-of-towners populated the beach before they came on, they might not even be able to go to the beach, which is pretty amazing. We were told last year that we better not enforce a maximum number of people on the beach because of the lawsuit. They thought it would be a restriction of access to the beach, and it's hard to believe that there wouldn't be a number of people in a confined area like that. And if there was a medical emergency of some sort and it was packed, I don't know.
I disagree that Hammonasset and Rocky Neck closed.
Don't they restrict the number of cars, though?
Yeah, they shut the parking lot down, no more people allowed.
Rocky Neck,
Yeah, Rocky Neck and Hammonasset.
Ocean Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have a parking lot like that.
Yeah.
We have a very porous boundary, So, I don't know. It's a very difficult situation, and it gets people with high blood pressure. So we need to keep our discussion going with.
Well, Rocky Neck and Hammonasset are state beaches, so that comes under separate rules. But Ocean Beach is a public beach.
But it's hard to use parking as your control factor when you have people who live in Miami.
Yeah.
And they live, all the Soundview people live there, and people can park out on town streets and stuff. Sometimes they get tickets, but...
All I can say is that I just hope that what we need to decide on something, we need to put it into place, and then we need to stick to it. Nothing changes, and if there's a change, it has to be voted on by the Board of Selectmen. Not just willy-nilly, I'm locking it at 7, I'm locking it at 6, tomorrow night's 8:15.
Yeah.
It's got to be the same all season long, unless there's an issue that comes up that causes it for changes to be made.
Well, and the fees, too.
Right.
Because we have the kiosk, and those work pretty well for the street and the town parking. We have to get the fairness between what people are charged for the town spaces and what they're charged for the... Now, pretty much private lots, they can vary the fees from day to day. If it's a lousy day, they'll probably say $10. If it's a beautiful day, it's 20, 25 or more.
So
Hmm?
they get their permit, so it's on them what they charge, I guess.
Right.
Oh,
Unless we change the fees to them too, so
Well,
look at.
yeah. So that's a thing that we need to get going.
how many total spots are in the lot?
Our lot?
Yeah.
I think 74 or 5, something like that. Some of them are HP, some of them are town. So if a public person came and they would save the 10 for the townspeople. So, and if we close a lot at night, or when we close a lot at night, if people don't get their car out, then they either have a problem or they can find the alley up to get out. But
But that could cause problems too.
it's not an easy thing, so.
Well, if we do sum up a time and close it, it has to be well marked, that's all, and then you have to deal with it, you know?
So what would your suggestion be if a car was locked in?
If the car's locked in, there's a fire road that can go out.
The alleyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They call it fire road, yeah.
The alley,
Yeah.
if they can find it. Yeah.
But, okay, well, we need to have a discussion.
Yeah,
That needs to go to further discussion. It's only December. We'll put something down.
We're getting to affordable housing. I'll unmute and see whether Michael Fogliano is perhaps still with us.
But there's no room that we don't need to put all the stuff in there, though. We can put it out on a shelf out here, right? Yeah.
Michael Fogliano,
Yeah,
are you
on one of these,
around?
yeah.
Michael Fogliano. Okay, I guess he's not with us. So, affordable housing is doing a wonderful job at developing the affordable housing plan, which is due in June of this coming year. It's a 5-year requirement, and they have been working with the Council of Governments to share with them what they've learned, vice versa. So that group is really taking a bull by the horns when they were a committee and now a commission. So this next June is a big important time, and they'll be getting back to us with some suggestions. I think you know that there are the McCulloch property, so-called, the 300 acres the town bought. There was a deed provision that said we could have 2 affordable housing lots, and the open space gang is recommending that those be situated close to the 2 affordable that exist off of Flat Rock, near the cul-de-sac. And I think they've done some survey work and so forth, so that there could be suitable lots for that. Then it would be, we could find a developer, if you will, to do something like Hope did with the other affordable, where the land is owned by an entity. Could be the town even, but it's been Hope. Could be Habitat. So then the house is built, the person occupying the house owns the house, but there's a deed restriction, so if they leave, they would sell it, and they share in the profit, so they get all the profit. I'm not sure exactly the formula. And heretofore, the town has abated the taxes on the land, so it makes it more affordable for the occupant. They're not paying the tax on the land. So those 2 will be coming along. There's another proposal that Mark Diebold put together, which is up on Hatchett's Hill, just behind that big building as you come in. And he is contemplating around a 200-plus unit, similar to what would be in Saybrook near the train station, where there would be 30%, minimum 30% affordable, which would translate to about 60 units or better. That would certainly move the needle on the number of units that we have, because doing a house here and a house there, you're not doing much. And because it's deed restricted, we all know of various properties that are affordable to either buy or lease, but they don't count because they don't have a deed restriction.
If this Hatchet Hill thing, would he need access to sewers with that?
He said initially yes. I talked to him not too long ago, and he said he's now trying to work, I don't know whether it's additional land somewhere, but the property's pretty rocky. So if he could find suitable leaching fields and good water on location, that would solve problems. Because he does have an access down to 4 Mile River Road from that property somehow, which if you put a pipe down there, went across 4 Mile River Road, you get into Colton Road to the East Lyme Sewer and Water. But whether, I can tell you from experience that getting an allocation, because the number of gallons would be similar to what the town got for Soundview. So it's a challenge to get that.
Okay.
But if you could find it on an adjacent parcel, that would be he'd be in great shape.
Okay.
The harbor management, I spoke to John McDonald, who is the chairman. What they would like to do is to dredge a section of the channel on the Long Island Sound side of the bridge going out of the 4 Mile River. And it was done, as part of the Black Hall River, 4 Mile River dredging project, but didn't take too long for it to silt in. So I gather it would likely be a repetitive thing, more or less. So he was saying that depending on the nature of the sand, if it's coarse sand, there might be the ability to transport the sand to Rocky Neck and put it on their beach, because they'd be in the market for it. If it's fine grained sand, he said that sort of sand might harbor other ingredients that wouldn't be so good. Coarse sand, he said, is more like a filter. It's big enough and bad stuff doesn't get trapped. So that would be great. So they are still working on it. They need to get permission, of course, from the various places to do it, and the cost and so forth. Their RFP, I think they had a response, but I don't think they made a deal with anyone with the RFP, so they're technically out of the period of time for the RFP. So they're not going to sleep on it, but it's going to require more work. And I wrote up some notes on it, but they will continue to work to get something done so they can dredge that. But it's not quick and easy. They were going to get money from the Connecticut Port Authority, and I think he referred to it as legacy money from the prior dredging. There was something like $250,000 left on that allocation. And he's not been able to determine whether that $250,000 is still in an account somewhere or designated for Lyme, or whether it's been deemed to be abandoned and now soaked up and it's not forthcoming. So we're sort of in you have to deal with DEP and you have to deal with the Port Authority. So slow boat. Okay, we'll turn to new business. I think Did everyone go to that Regional District 18 building capital improvement meeting? Did you see that?
I listened to it, yeah.
And you're well-versed.
Well-versed.
I gather that it's not going to be in the immediate future, but it's not going to be in the far distant future either. So, you want to?
The fall. The fall. A referendum possibly in the fall. Is that what Ian told you?
Is that likely?
Well, I don't know. As of Friday, it said it probably was not going to be in the spring.
Yeah.
Yes. So there is another presentation, I know, to the board at the January Board of Ed meeting. There'll be another, and then the next steps would be to determine which option, to slim the options down. And that I know that Ian met with the state and the current architect to determine the feasibility of which plans would be eligible for the most reimbursement or what looks best to the state, because they'll tell you if they're not going to fund a project. So they've got those 5. I don't think an answer has come back from them as of yet, but we should have an update at the January Board of Ed meeting, which is the first week of...
I think during the presentation it was pretty small reimbursement levels.
It is based on, there's a whole lot of different calculations that have to be done, because depending on what you do, and then they look for a 5 and a 10-year enrollment projection out, and the more enrollment that you might have, the more reimbursement that you would be eligible for. But that's all calculated through those people that handle that deal.
Now, you hear the renovated is new. I remember prior discussions, if you renovated as new, you got a much higher reimbursement than just renovating, right?
Renovating the current, like, HVAC systems are not, it's not completely eligible, because it's basically like maintenance. You have to maintain. It's like your home. But if you do some types of renovations to change the
interior,
in the envelope, then it becomes a different project.
Did the school district come to us for some ARPA money?
No, they got their own.
They got their own.
But I thought HVAC nationwide was a huge issue, and there was just going to be lots of money for HVAC. Is Connecticut not as liberal with it, or?
I don't know. We haven't talked about that yet. Kind of in the early stages of right now. We've got to decide what we do, and I think that's one of the reasons that we need more time.
Yeah.
So.
I think that was I thought I recall vividly that there was a big discussion about HVAC.
Well, with COVID especially, to say the filtration systems and the need for air conditioning.
Isn't that a big part of this 40 plus million HVAC?
Right.
So if there was some serious grant funding, that could maybe forget about the puny state, or take it, but at least you could maybe get some of that money, but hope we'll see.
There still needs to be further study.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Okay. Economic Development Commission will be putting together a forum, principally, I think, for boards and commissions in town to inform them what's going on and what the Economic Development Commission has done over the recent past. And so there'll be, I think, within the next week or so, there's going to be a planning meeting on the forum. It was contemplated some months before, but it hadn't happened yet. So I think the audience is primarily other boards and commissions to hear what's been going on, what the vision is.
So that's Cheryl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And And last on the new business is the CCM convention. The 3 selectmen went to that, and it was, as usual, very informative. They had some excellent workshops, and we had a couple of good awards. One was for Cheryl and the Sustainable Committee. They got the silver certification, which is the highest level at the moment. And Michelle Noren also completed the coursework to be a certified municipal employee. Is a course that goes through that, and I'm not sure totally all what that means, but
She had to take 36 hours of courses. I think it's 36.
yeah, and probably have a
Within a 2-year
paper
period.
at the end kind of thing. You know.
What?
It may have been a paper at the end. I'm not sure, but
I don't know.
yeah. But it's a great opportunity to listen to other towns and some of the other speakers talking about what's going on in Connecticut. CCM holds during the budget season legislative workshops talking about what's going on in Connecticut, and they happen monthly, starting pretty much in January and then through May.
Are those virtual?
The first one will be. I don't know if they'll be doing hybrid ones. They said that starting in February they would start having meetings in actually Wallingford, a location there. But they may do, if they can arrange it, you'd think they could do a virtual for people too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, all right. We come now to public comment. We have a gentleman here. Come forward. Very good. Oh, I think I know who that is.
Who is behind this mask?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
I want to give each of you a copy of this letter.
Okay, Mark.
Glossies on the second page.
Mark Mangelo is president of the Miami Beach Association.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, president of the Miami Beach Association. As Tim was talking about the Swan Brook outlet, I just handed the selectmen a paper that myself, another officer in our association, Dan Montana, and Peter Doolittle and Ron Bianca from Hawks Nest Beach Club Association put together. We sent this to Tom Kotoka as the chair of the ARP upon a request to do so. But from our perspective, when you read the letter and you take a look at the pictures, I think it says it all. We've been examining this problem for a few years. Tim actually helped when we uncovered a manhole, and we took a look in one of the pipes. One of our members, one of Miami Beach's members, owns a company, and he put a drain camera in there so we could actually see a blockage which was about 100 feet from the high tide water mark coming north. But that pipe has probably been blocked for about 10 years. And
The western one.
the western one that Tim mentioned. And as Tim mentioned also, the town attorney has stated that it is the town's responsibility. So when the question was asked, is this a liability to the town? I mean, my personal feeling is yes. I mean, when you take a look at the pictures that I provided there, albeit that's not all, I do encourage the board to visit the site, take a look at how dilapidated it is. And right now, I would think that Ed Adante has someone going down there on a daily basis just to see if the pipes are blocked, because when those pipes are blocked, no water can get through. So where does it go? It goes into the parking lot, it goes into our members' yards. Most of the water flows, unfortunately, into Miami Beach Association because of that low area. And I think I heard tonight that a couple of the selectmen probably have a good and bad to say about Swan Brook itself if it does go through your property. So you know what we're talking about, and understanding that water, drain water, comes down Hartford Avenue, Portland Avenue, goes into drains and into pipes that run down Pond Road to Miami Beach, all into Swan Brook. So unfortunately, Miami Beach is basically the recipient of everything that's bad about Swan Brook. And we need relief. And we sent this to the ARP, but from our perspective, and that, when I say our, I'm talking about not only Miami Beach Association, but Hawks Nest, is we don't care where the town gets the funds from. It has to get fixed. It's a liability. It's flooding people's properties, and I'm sure that if anyone here lived in that area and you had to wake up to ankle-deep, knee-deep water every day, you wouldn't like that very much. And our members are getting pretty frustrated, and I don't blame them. You know, obviously, as president, I get all the complaints from our members. I'm trying to do what we can, but some of the stuff is just, it's out of our hands. As Tim mentioned, maybe the longer-term solution is to straighten out Swan Brook when it gets to the end of where the head wall is right now on Hawks Nest, and just straighten that out and follow the property line of Hawks Nest in Miami. But that's a long-term solution. It might be the right solution, but that also has to be investigated, only because now you have an open trench, and during hurricanes, you just have created a waterway for that water just to come right up the brook. So there's a lot of things that have to be looked at, and I don't know if the board is aware of this, but back in 1987, the town actually did a study on Swan Brook about what could be done. And you might have that in your archives.
Gary Smith was involved in that.
Pardon?
Gary Smith, I think, was involved in that.
This is 1987, so I don't know if he was or not.
Not Gary Schmidt, Smith.
Oh, Smith. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. I
He's
don't
an engineer.
Right. So, I mean, you can take a look at that report, and you can see some of what they were recommending way back in 1987. Something about enclosing Swan Brook and putting it into, pipes, the whole 9 yards. But whether or not that's feasible today, and even whether it's economically feasible, is probably be out of sight. But I'm just asking the board to take a field trip and take a look at it, and do what's morally and ethically correct here, because it's difficult living when your property is going to continually being flooded. And like I said, I'm sure the town is being stretched now because they got to have somebody down there to clean those pipes every single, the outlet at least. And it's getting to the point where that's probably, you can't even keep up with that.
Now, in years past, has it plugged up quite as much as it's plugging up now?
No. It used to plug up. You would handle it. The town would come down. They would dig it out. As we talked, Tim, getting that second pipe opened, I think would make a big difference. But now, since the crib is destroyed, even if you got that second pipe open, it's going to get filled up with sand, because there's nothing to protect. There's nothing to prevent that sand from washing in. And I spoke with the doco engineer, as you did too, and his concept of a kind of a hockey stick look to it makes a lot of sense. And it's not sticking way out there where it's going to change the topography of the beach. It'll definitely, to me, it makes sense that it will improve the situation. And once that second pipe is open, and if the crib gets rebuilt and designed in the proper way, it does sound like it's something that definitely could work. And then it gives us time to look at a longer-term solution of straightening out the brook if we can. Like I said, unfortunately, Swan Brook starts on the north of 156, gets a lot of stuff, and Miami Beach is just a recipient of everything that's coming down. And we're kind of in a bad position there. I'd like to comment on one other thing. you have any questions of me right now on the outlook, I'm more than happy to ask. But the other comment I want to make is something that also was brought up tonight, was the Soundview Beach. And we have met last summer between myself, members of the Soundview Commission, including Frank Pappalardo, Tim, the resident state trooper, and others. We met almost on a weekly basis to see, what could be done. It's a tough situation. I don't envy your positions here. You have to take a look at everything, but I'm hoping that this board will truly examine the nature of what's happening down there. Miami Beach has been, our members, we tax them just like you tax the town. They pay not only the property tax to the town, they pay a tax to us, just like all the chartered organizations do. And for all these years, Miami Beach has absorbed that cost of keeping that beach clean and having security on the beach. This year, the town has helped out immensely with the rangers and with the resident state trooper. It's a great help. But when you think about what we pay, our members pay, and even if you subtract out the stipend of approximately $20,000 between the beach cleaning and what we paid on security this year was like $53,000. Right. Take out the stipend of approximately $20,000. Our members are paying $33,000 out of our own tax money, and we get no help from anybody. If the permitted parking lots, if there was no Miami Beach, or if Miami Beach was purely private, you wouldn't have permitted parking lots, because what would they do? But now it's a free-for-all, and I think it was mentioned here tonight. Take the state parks; they're able to close, right? If it gets, we're not able to close because you're going to close the permitted parking lots? They just keep on bringing people in, and it's just going to keep on coming. So there's no closure there at all, and it's a cash business. And their fees for the parking is a one-time fee. So if they've got 10 spots, let's say, and they pay $35, that's $350 for the permit for the whole season. They make that $350 in about 6 hours on a busy day. The rest is all cash in their pocket. They give Miami Beach nothing, but they compile the people onto the beach, because without Miami Beach, where would they go? Soundview doesn't have the capacity to hold 7 parking lot fulls of people. They don't. So nature of the beast. We're looking for some help at this point. We're looking for just being responsible to say, what's the right thing to do here? Our members we can't keep this up. Year after year, we've been doing this every single year. The money is coming out of Miami Beach members' pockets, and there's no return at all. It can get very frustrating. But then again, we've appreciated the help that Tim and the town has given in the form of the Rangers, and they've done a great job. But how long is that going to continue? And if it wasn't for Miami Beach security, because law enforcement can't check coolers because of the Police Accountability Act, and no town employees can check coolers because of that act, Miami Beach can. So if it wasn't for Miami Beach checking coolers to try to keep the alcohol off the beach, it would have been a lot worse than what it was. The Rangers still wrote tickets, but not nearly the tickets that they probably would have written if it wasn't for Miami Beach being able to check coolers. If we just walked away from it, just think about that. How would you control the alcohol on the beach? Police can't stop it. Mm-hmm. And now it's even worse with the legalized marijuana. So you got so many things going here that we're all trying to do. And as I said, we're all trying to be good citizens and want to do whatever we can for the town of, this is for the town of Old Lyme. This is not just for Miami Beach. This is for all the beach communities, trying to keep things safe, healthy, and family-oriented. We want people in the town of Old Lyme to come to the beach. Yet but they tell us, we're not coming to your beach. You got all kinds of crazy stuff happening on your beach. How does that make you feel? I mean, if townspeople won't come to a beach because they don't like what's happening on the beach, isn't that kind of a wake-up call? Should be a wake-up call. So,
Yeah.
anyway, I just hope that you all consider and think about all the things. There's a lot to this. This is not like, oh, I've got a solution. God knows how many times we sat down and said, can we do this? For every point, there's a counterpoint. Because you're trying to balance everything. No one here is trying to discriminate against anybody. It's just that from our perspective, Miami Beach has taken the brunt of a lot of stuff all these years. And it's getting to a breaking point with us. It really is. You know, and we know we have the outstanding appeal, the appeal of outstanding, and, you know, whatever happens with that happens. And then we'll have to see what the next steps will be. But that in itself puts pressure on the town. Win or lose, that puts pressure on the town when you think about it. Because it could open up floodgates. And the town's going to have to be prepared for that too, if it does. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mongillo.
All right, we'll open.
At the phone.
Yep. Anyone on the phone wishes to make a public comment?
The packing tape, yeah.
I would. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Mary Daly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted the packing tape. The white
Thanks.
stock tape. Okay.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Somebody's talking in the background, and I'm speaking through a speaker. My first comment is, as I told Michelle at the last Selectmen's meeting, that number that you're using for dial-in, it's actually charging me per second. And that's because it's a 605 area code, which has nothing to do with Connecticut. I asked Michelle before to look into that. It seems unfair that I have to pay just to dial into the meeting. I would like you to please look into that and see why. I know I'm out of district or out of area because I don't live in a 605 area code. So I'm paying for this meeting by the minute. So I thank you for that. The other thing is...
Just so you know, we switched to the service because the other one was so bad dialing in. I don't know.
Well, the Zoom meetings seem to work perfectly. But this... So I'm now paying by the minute, but thank you. Just going back to the beginning discussion way back, I think 2 hours ago, about Soundview, I still question why we're still in this or out. You've had test data for over a year. You spent $8,000 extra and have sat on it and done nothing for a year. Now, with the cost being high, a lot of that I would assume is attributed to the extra 150,000 GPD that you don't know what you're going to use it for. You're just assuming at some point Hawks Nest is going to be part of the full. Pretty sure Hawks is going to fight long and hard against that. And then data to subscribe. It's only that the WPCA and I guess the Selectmen did not look at the data that you authorized the town to spend $48,000 to collect. And I think if you looked at that data, it would clear up that issue once and for all so that going forward you could size this sewer project correctly and in case this other whole community has to be integrated into it. So I think cart before the horse once more. And again...
You the magic bullet?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I've just waited like 2 hours. I would appreciate just being able to say my piece. That again, you should look at that data. You collected it. You spent a year collecting it. You spent $48,000 of tax dollars to collect it. It would answer a lot of questions in regard to this project. But the other thing is, let's not forget there's also a state statute. You can't just push the entire cost of the sewer over to 120 families in Soundview. There's state statutes against that. So I think at this point, you have to be honest with the rest of the town and say, where is the rest of this money going to come from? And why isn't the WPCA going back to deep, as they did for White Sands, and argue that this project is just too cost prohibitive? There are other solutions now. This started 10, 15 years ago. The deep now recognizes engineered systems that they didn't in the beginning that are much more cost affordable than the sewer project. And why aren't we even considering looking at that? Because as you know, clean water funds say you must come up with the most cost-effective solution, just not any solution. And sewering, now that you have the bids, it's not the most cost-effective solution. So those are my comments. Again, we march forward not knowing where the money's going to come from. Maybe we'll get a grant. Maybe we'll get this. One thing we do know, you cannot charge just Soundview residents, homeowners, for the entire cost of this project. There's a state statute against it. And it's time to let the rest of the town know that if this goes forward, most likely they're going to be digging deep into their own pockets as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to make a comment on the phone? Going once? Going twice? All right, thank you very much. We will now we'll turn now to other business. If the selectmen have any other points they wish to raise.
Can I just ask, is there a possibility that we could put public comment at the beginning of the meeting? And the reason for that would be that if they have something to say about something that we're maybe voting on that day, that we'd actually possibly hear maybe something
That's
new.
flexible.
And especially if we're having this trouble with this phone system, they wouldn't be paying,
I don't know about phones nowadays. You almost didn't pay for long distance, but
no, but this service is charging them a penny a minute or something, or 10 cents a minute. I know that this came up after the first meeting, so we need to look into it because we can't be charging taxpayers to come to a public meeting, even if it's virtual. I mean, hybrid.
Yeah, there's no rule that has to be. It could be front loaded.
I just think, like, Mark sat here for 2 hours, and their time is valuable. They left work early or whatever to come here, but I think it would be something to consider.
Yeah. Anything else for the cause?
No.
All right. Well, it's 3 minutes after 7. We could entertain a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion.
Well, second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.